Hello, we are live. Welcome to another live windsurf coaching with me, Graham Ezzy. Most of you are veterans of the stream, so you know how this goes. But if this is your first time, I'm Graham Ezzy. I am a pro windsurfer, and I do live windsurf coaching every Sunday at this time without fail. It's free. You can find it either on YouTube or on Facebook. There's a corresponding Facebook community that goes along with this live stream. It's a great community full of motivated, smart, interested windsurfers. I'm always impressed when I read the comments and posts. So great community that goes along with this. And that's where I get my inspiration for what I talk about on the Sunday live coaching. And of course, you can interrupt me, and I'll even interrupt myself, like saying, "Hi, Jorg, welcome to the stream." You can interrupt me, and we can talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. Let me see while we wait for people to show up. Hey, Dom Dom, if I have any housekeeping stuff. So I'm busy working away on the first newsletter. So if you want to support the live stream, if you want to support the Facebook group, if you want to join the newsletter, you can do that. Patreon.com/Graham Ezzy. I can put that in the chat. And yeah, I'm really excited doing the newsletter. It's something different. Something else I was working on yesterday is sort of a model to show how all of these different coaching things fit together. Mainly, it's important for me to understand, okay, what is important about the live stream, what's important about the newsletter, what's important about the in-person classes, what's important about the Zoom classes, and how do they all fit together. But I think, so I kind of hand drew all of that, but I think it's interesting for you guys as well who are doing these different coaching things with me to see how they fit together, and then you can figure out, okay, what works for you or what doesn't. Whoa, we got a lot of people showing up in the chat all of a sudden. Hey, Dennis, good to see you. Dennis says he was in a horse-drawn wagon in the middle of nowhere, living like a gypsy. That sounds amazing. I want to hear more about that. Hey, Caro, Orguz, John, no sailing. I also didn't sail this week. Hans, much improvement. Nice. Devil's Tack, best way to improve. Dan had a light wind freestyle session. Hey, soon from Denmark. No wind this week. Yeah, I also didn't sail. I've been busy working on different things. Philip, like working on the newsletter and some of the other things that we've got going on. I'm getting ready for the courses that I'm doing in Denmark that are coming up. I always get, at this point, like I get kind of excited and nervous, and I really want to make them good. And so I think about ways to keep adding to the material that we've already there's already in the bank. So what else can we do? What else can we do? And so I've been working on all that stuff, making sure that I'm prepared. What else before we get into the Facebook group? Hey, Ragnar, I had a funny experience last night. I'm in Hamburg, where I live for part of the year, and I went to a friend's wedding, and I was coming back. It was about 2 a.m. I took a bus to get back to where I live in the city in Hamburg, and just kind of minding my own business. I've got on my, my wedding clothes, and then someone stops me. Or they actually don't stop me. They said, "Oh, are you Graham Ezzy?" I had this funny but very nice encounter with a fan at like 2 a.m, which was funny because like windsurfing is such a niche sport. There's not, outside of the beaches, you don't really get recognized that often, though it does happen. Just a funny time in a place, like 2 a.m, coming home from a wedding. It was it was like just a funny experience. But nice guys, if you guys are on the stream, welcome. That was nice. Oh, cool, Dom Dom. Good to hear that you had a good Devil's Tack session. Oh, and Lake Garda Windsurfing 2 from Facebook user. All right, I'm gonna launch the Facebook group, and we're gonna just get into the coaching. So let's see. Let me load up the Facebook window and we can just dive right into it. There we are. All right, so we've got a few different topics. So first up, we've got a post from Caro, who's one of the regulars, one of the originals. Caro is joining our masterclass in September. I think this is her fourth one. And it's so cool to watch her improve. All right, so she says, I wanted to give a brief update on my forward loop learning path. So she's in Tenerife, and she's been working on her jumping. And here are her 4 main takeaways. And so something that is so important when we're talking about the forward loop is that there's the technical aspect, there's the fear aspect, and it's really important not to ignore either one. And so I hear a lot of people say, oh, it's just about just getting over the fear, just have the balls and go for it. And I disagree with that. I think you want to have the right technique. And by having the right technique also, it reduces the fear and you have less of a hurdle to get over. But then also with even if you have all that technique, there still is that fear hurdle. And so you have to work on getting over that hurdle as well. And so those 2 parts are really important. And every person is going to have their own struggle with that balance. You know, some people will have a really easy time understanding the technique, and it will take a long time to get over the fear hurdle, which is one side of it. And the other side is, not having any problems with the fear, but struggling to get that, to understand that technique, to physically get the technique. So I think that's really important, especially when we're giving advice to other people and when we're looking at ourselves. Hey, Max, welcome, welcome. That distinction is really important in understanding where you fall on that balance, where other people fall, because the advice that works for you might not work for someone else if they're on the other side of the spectrum, right? If they don't have a problem with the technique, they have a problem with the fear, then giving them technical advice isn't going to help them, right? You see where I'm going with this? All right, let's get into it with Caro. So she says, do not consider yourself a bad windsurfer if you can't do the forward. I struggled with that for years. I think this is something that is especially true in Europe, a little bit less so on Maui, but you can definitely be a really good windsurfer and not be able to do the forward loop. And, Caro, who is getting her forwards and is working on them, is a great windsurfer, and she would be even if she weren't trying to learn the forwards. And there are other good windsurfers that don't do forward loops. 2, do not feel bad if you go back looking like an absolute beginner and learning basic stuff. Yep. And this is so important for learning anything new. Learning anything new and anything hard, you have to be comfortable looking like a beginner. You have to be comfortable looking silly. It's so important. You are your own worst enemy when it comes to learning. And what stops people from learning more than anything else is being afraid to look silly. Find your own way and speed of learning. Check, check, check. Get the right gear. I'm using super neutral freestyle sails this season, where I don't need to pull against something with my backhand. So the fear is less. That's cool. That's not something I've thought of before. And I think that that's cool advice. All right, let's watch some of these videos. Let's go full screen. So this is in Tenerife. So you can see that Caro, she's got really nice technique. Really nice technique. And so she's been dealing with the mental side, but you can see that she's got great technique, getting the board downwind, getting the sail horizontal. Yeah, and so what she's been working on is just getting comfortable going with more speed, going a little bit higher. And let's see this one. Oh, let me turn the sound off there. All right. Yeah. Yeah, these are great, Carl. Like you said, um, you're just kind of taking your own time with it, and it's just a matter of picking up the speed as you feel comfortable. Is just adding speed, adding speed, adding speed. I think also, you're going off of whitewater sections. A nice section for this kind of forward loop, how you're doing it, is exactly right here. So if you can see where my mouse is, so instead of hitting the whitewater, it's hitting this corner right next to the whitewater. And so it's steep, but you have a little bit of area off the back of the wave where you can have a little bit more free fall. So even with this same speed, though I think you do want to increase your speed a little bit, hitting this section will also give you a little bit more room to rotate. But it looks good. You've got great technique. It's just a matter of picking up the speed and just that slow and steady pace. But I know this has been a long journey for you, and respect. It's cool that you've kept up with it. You didn't have to, and you don't have to. So I have a lot of respect that you've come back to the forward loop despite having some mental blocks, and not just working on your back loops or whatever else you're also working on. Oh, this page crashed. All right, so nice. All right, next up, we've got this post from Marco. It's his second post. He watched one of my videos where I'm talking about the fundamentals of wave riding. And he says that one thing that is not talked about are priority rules. Means whose wave is it? Is it your wave? Is it the other guy's wave? And then how to behave with other crafts, kite surfers, foilers, surfers, everything else. This is a good question, and it's something we've talked about before on the stream. We've talked about it at length. I'm not really sure which stream that was. I don't know if it might be in the record that Dom so amazingly keeps up for us. Which, by the way, Dom, I had a gift for you that I think wasn't sent because there was a shipment that was supposed to go to our the Ezzy French distributor that in the end, for whatever reason, didn't get to him. Anyway, I gotta figure that out if that happened or not. Anyway, so about priority. Priority. Whose wave is it? Is it your wave? Can you go on it? What are the rules? So I think the number one rule is respect, and it's respect for the place, respect for the locals. So that means when you go somewhere new, or even if it's your home spot, but you're not so established in the scene, talk to people there. Ask them what the priority rules are. Because the truth is that there is not a set of global rules that you can take everywhere. There are some standard rules that I'm going to go over in a minute. But the truth is that the rules are different sometimes depending on the place. And that's okay. That's okay, right? So, like, for example, I've never been there, but what I've heard, like in Margaret River, there is a rotation system. So you go out and you wait your turn. Everyone waits together, and then you kind of go like in a line, each person getting a wave. Hokipa is very different. Hokipa is super competitive. It's the first person on the wave. That's it. First person on the wave. So you go out to Japan to catch your waves and come back in. For hey, Facebook user, let us know who you are. I know StreamYard can be difficult with the permissions, but we want to know who you are. So we're talking about priority rules and whose wave is it? And so the number one thing, I'm going to repeat this again and again, is you want to ask. So if it's your local beach, if you're traveling somewhere, ask what the rules are, because there might be different rules, and ask a few people, because then you'll really see kind of what it is and watch how it's working. Hey, hello, Facebook user, watch how the locals are catching waves, watch how it's working. In some places in the world, it is about being more upwind or closer to the peak rather than just being the first person on the wave. In Pozo, for example, there's one specific peak where some of the locals say that if you catch the wave there, then you have priority on the wave, even if someone else is already riding the wave. Um, so there's just a lot of different ways to interpret priority, and it's really important to talk to the locals, talk to the people from the place about what the rules are. Now, that said, there are some sort of standard rules that I would say you should default to. So if you're not talking to the locals, default to these. I mean, I think you should talk to the rules, but default to these locals if you that tongue-tied. Default to these rules if you don't have a chance to talk to the locals. And basically that is the first person on the wave has the wave. So first person on the wave has the wave. If you both get on the wave at the same time, give priority to the person that's more upwind. The caveat that I'll say to that is I think you should give, if two people get on the wave, you should give priority to the person who's in a better position. So I'll do this at Hokipa, for example, even if we're not both on the wave at the same time, but it's my wave and someone else kind of gets on it and they're in a much better position because I'm too downwind and I'm not going to be able to come up and really ride the wave. I'll tack off it because why waste the upper part of that wave? Like for what? So that's kind of the basic rules. But again, you really want to ask. So let's get into now some of the like gray area here. And then we'll talk about the other crafts where there's less gray area. It is more black and white. So some of the gray area, I think it is important to give respect to locals, especially if you're traveling. This is something I'm super aware of when I'm traveling to different spots around the world, because especially places that are good windsurfing locations, they have a lot of tourists and you might only be there for a week, but the guy that lives there has tourists every week of the year. And, maybe he or she works a job and they get off work at whatever, 5 and they get to the beach and they have an hour to get on the water before they have to get home, or maybe they just have one day off every 2 weeks or whatever it is, and it happens to line up with the wind that week. You don't know what their reality is and what they see, and they see a lot of people coming through, especially these places that have really good conditions like Cape Town or somewhere else. And you see localism start to show up in places where there are a lot of tourists coming. And as a tourist, you might not see the effect. You're like, well, I'm only here for a week. I want to just catch some waves. But there's also hundreds of other people that are only there for a week. And that can make it really difficult. So I think it's very important to give respect to locals when you travel. And that's something that I try very consciously to do when I'm traveling, because I travel a lot for windsurfing. Some of the localism, I have to say, is a little silly. Like I remember there's one wave that I sailed. This has happened a couple times to me. Once in Ireland, once somewhere else, where I sailed this wave, and the locals were like, "Yeah, you can't post about it. Don't talk about it." This also happened somewhere in California too, and I fully respected it. I didn't post it. I didn't say the name. I didn't say anything. But those spots were so hardcore and so heavy, like launching through rocks, gusty offshore wind, hard barreling waves. Like, they're not going to get busy. Like, it's tricky for me to do it. You're not going to get like hundreds of tourists. So if you are one of those locals, also understand that if your epic local spot is really hardcore, you can tell the world about it and you might get one more person or two more people. It's not going to get crowded. But anyway, from the side of the tourists, respect the locals, talk to the locals, figure out what the rules are. I think also, so something that that Marco says in his post is give priority to over 55. I definitely think there's something important about giving priority to the older generation and yeah, just giving respect. So if you're one of the younger guys, don't hog every wave. I think one of the things to be aware of is how many waves you're catching, how many waves you're catching compared to everyone else. And so even if you have priority, and this is a good point, even if you have priority, don't be a wave hog. No one likes the guy that's, even if he has priority, is going out and catching every single wave, and especially if you're a tourist, if it's not your home spot. But even if it is your home spot, the other people want to get some waves too. If you're better at navigating the priority system, you can still get more waves than other people, but don't take all the waves. No one likes that. Um, it's not cool. And yeah, it's just don't do it. Hey Jeff, good to have you on this stream. I don't know what the priority situation is like in Oregon. I don't know if it gets crowded enough that you have to really worry about it on the coast. I'd love to hear. So now dealing with other crafts. So surfers always have priority over windsurfers. Swimmers as well, but it comes up more with surfers. So that means even if you're riding a wave and a surfer then paddles for the wave that you're on, you have to just give them space and maybe stop riding the wave and let them take it if they manage to stand up and get on it. And I know that that can be annoying, and I've had this discussion um, with other members of our coaching community who that the notion that they have to give up the wave that they're already riding really pisses them off. But look at it from the surfer's perspective. They will never have priority over you because you're always catching the wave farther outside, right? It's the same with a stand-up, going out on a stand-up board in a surf lineup, right? Like if the surfer, um, if a surfer, like a normal surfer, paddles into a wave that a stand-up paddler is on, the stand-up paddler should give way to the surfer because otherwise the stand-up paddler or the windsurfer or whatever can get all the waves. That means that they have pick of all the waves just because of the craft that they're on. And so you always have to give way to surfers. And that's important. It's really important also for the harmony of between windsurfers and surfers around the world. Um, yeah, that's an important point. Give priority to surfers. All right, now kite surfers. I know some of you guys kite surf. I have nothing against kite surfers. I have nothing against kite surfing. But somehow there's so many kiters that seem oblivious to respect and priority. I don't know what it is with the sport. Like, I just don't get it. And on Maui and what I think it should be, though I do recognize this is not the case everywhere, and like I said, I do respect local rules. So, like, in Tenerife or these other places where kiters have, equal priority with windsurfers, I'll respect that. But I think that kiting is more maneuverable. They're able to catch the waves farther out. They can catch the waves more easily. That they should give priority to the windsurfers. And sometimes this creates a conflict. And I don't know. I try to stay away from kiters. I feel like kiters are dangerous. And yeah, I don't know what it is. Like I would love someone to explain to me why there are more oblivious and disrespectful people who kite surf than who windsurf or do some of these other sports. And the one I hate is like the guy on the, and it's always a guy, like they're women kite surfers, but they're not, I haven't ever had an issue with them. There's always a guy, and like what I hate is like on the twin tip, which is not even made for riding waves, and then like jibing, coming through, chopping up your wave, just like getting in the way, chopping up your wave for what? I don't know. I don't know. So I think windsurfers should have priority over the kiters, but check what the local situation is. I think that's important. Um, yeah. And then compared to stand up. and the foiling stuff. I think windsurf foiling is the same as windsurfing. Wing foiling, I'm not really sure. I mean, the thing with wing foiling is that they're not, at least right now, they're not really on the wave and they don't chop it up. So you can go behind someone on a wing foil, and because they're not really riding where the wave is breaking, they're riding more on the shoulder. You guys can kind of share the wave, and they don't chop it up, which is nice, right? Because the foil's under the water. Um, anyway, I hope that that clears up some of the things. Just to recap, ask the locals. So ask what the rules are, because every spot does have its own nuances to priority rules. The default rule is the first person on the wave gets the wave. Give respect to locals, give respect to surfers, and don't hog all the waves. And talk about it. So I think that's another thing. If you have an issue, instead of getting in a fight, talk about it. I don't always follow that advice. Sometimes I get in fights on the water. I remember I had this issue in Tenerife last summer with this guy where I caught this wave, and then I don't know, he got on my wave and just got right in front of me. And I just didn't. I don't know why. And they were super angry at me. But anyway, talking's always better. Um, Yeah, so Dom Dom makes a good point. I think Dom Dom. So he says the problem of kite and paddle is that they can access the waves before they understand respect. I think that's true because the sports are easier, so they can get into situations sooner. I think that that's true. Um, I think this is Jeff saying he's not afraid to call off a disrespectful kiter. They can get 3 times the number of waves. Yeah, I think this is another thing. So I just said to always talk about it, not get in a fight. But sometimes you do have to assert your dominance on the water. And I know that that's frustrating and I know that that's annoying, but sometimes that's just the case. And you just have to give someone like a firm, strong, like, hey, like, just so that they get off your wave. And then, because this is true of windsurfers too, like they'll want to test you. And especially if you're sailing a new spot, the locals don't know if you're gonna like drive off the wave or you're just gonna go straight. So they're gonna get on some of your waves in the beginning. You just have to assert yourself, not too how do I say this? Not too whiny, just kind of like strong and calm, not hectic about it, but just, hey, this is my wave. And yeah, earn their respect that way. But it's not about like one thing that's important. One thing I see that gets people in trouble is thinking that it's about who's more upwind, um, which it's not in most places. It's about who's on the way first. Um, and then, yeah, I think that kind of covers all the other elements. If there's something I forgot, ask me, and we'll keep talking about it. All right. So Jorg posted this article about fear of big waves. So I went through this a little bit before the stream, and so she talks about, first of all, that some of that fear is normal. Kind of what's going on with the fear, flight, fight, fright, and yeah, I thought this was interesting. I want to read it more closely. It fits in with some of the stuff that I'm writing for the first newsletter that's coming out. So for those of you that signed up for the newsletter, because I think the topic of fear and handling fear is really interesting. And she talks about hypnotherapy, breathing, um, self-compassion, visualizations, these different techniques for dealing with the fear. And I think this is pretty solid. I think it's a really complicated topic, and so there's not like a one size fits all solution. Max, yes, I did listen to the hypnoscript. Let me respond to you privately about that. I have I have mixed feelings with hypnoscripts. Sometimes I think they work really well, and other times I think they're too like there's too much projection. Um, but yes, I did. I'll message you privately about that. Um, All right, let's move on. So anyway, this is interesting, worth a read. I'm also writing about this for the newsletter, some interesting stuff about fear, but it's a topic that we can talk about for a long time because I think it's very important. All right. This we talked about last week. Marco says he's afraid of ending up on the rocks, but he's going to try some of our comments his next session. So Marco, I want to hear how it goes. This is also from last week. So Manel is saying that he has a taboo to curve 86 for sideshore surfing, and it's a little big. He's 74 kilos, but it makes things easier. I think that size difference isn't crazy. 10 liters, like 10 liters over your kilograms is not crazy. Likes to sail a bit underpowered. Would like more of a loose feeling, more like a skate. It doesn't matter if it's a quad or trifin, maybe changing the fronts or maybe trying smaller back fin. Yeah, I think trying it, experimenting with your fins is, I think, a really good idea. I'm a huge fan of the K4 Ezzies. So for this board, it would be the 2 degrees and then the Scorcher 17 in the rear. And that should make it, like, you might be able to go down to a 16 in the rear, though that might be a little bit too small for that board. Maybe 8s in the front, and that might make it a little bit more surfy. But I think playing with the fins is probably the first place to go. Yeah, so you want to make it more skatey, more loose. Yeah, so I think playing with the fins is huge, and then playing with the strap placement as well. So where are your straps in relation to the board? So you might want to put the straps all the way back, which then will allow you to push more on the tail, which doesn't make it necessarily more skatey, like more slidey, but it does make it looser and easier to turn. So putting the straps back, putting the mass track back also is going to make it easier to turn. So I would try that and get the new fins, but maybe don't try those both at the same time. So try one first and the other, and then you really understand how it's affecting the board rather than changing a whole bunch of variables at the same time. So moving the mass track and the straps back, and then trying these other fins. And I'll try moving the fins and the straps back. Where are you hiding them now? And I love the Ezzy 2 degree 10 cm K4 as well as the 17 cm. All right, Andrew asks, anyone using these? And so this is like it's like with a tendon, but also a mechanical thing here, right? So it's not just the tendon, it also has this bolt. But I think these are not for the waves. So I wouldn't use this in the waves. I use a tendon joint. I know other people that use like an hourglass joint and are happy with them. The thing with the tendons is that they don't last forever. I change mine every year or two. And they also don't have, or they do have a shelf life. So if you buy a whole bunch of them, they will also go bad, like in your garage or whatever. So you should change them, but don't buy a bunch at a time and store them in your garage because those will also go bad. If you do have extras, store them in your freezer. That helps them last the longest. All right, so Juso wants to know, what are the best wave spots in Europe for beginner intermediate wave riding? Consistent conditions, active community are the key things. So I think that, like Axel says, Viana is a good choice. Tarifa, possibly. No one has said Tenerife. I think Tenerife is pretty good, especially on the harbor wall. Pozo, Pozo's a little bit hardcore, but I think it's really good for learning. There's a solid community, and as long as you're okay with high winds, or at least okay with learning high winds and okay with dealing with the rocks, um, you don't have to sail in the radical conditions. You learn a lot about wave sailing, and it's not, um, it's not down the line wave sailing, which is, the pinnacle of wave sailing, but you'll learn a lot. You'll learn a lot about jumping. You'll learn a lot about backside wave riding. Pozo is probably the best. There's a good community. There's coaches there. You can get footage of yourself. There's wind almost every day. Um, Pozo is probably the best. It's not the best conditions, but it's consistent conditions. It's wave conditions. You get on the water. A little bit outside side of the EU, I'd say Morocco. And where else? Where else? Where else is good in Europe? Conditions are consistent and there's a community. I think really, like, if you want to just jumpstart, you have to go to a place like Vienna or the Canary Islands where you have that really consistent wind. I think probably the Canaries are the best by a bit, even though the conditions are not. They can be really good, but they're not, epic wave riding conditions. But for learning, for getting into it, it's pretty good. And then once you have that base and that understanding, you can go somewhere else. Marco is saying Oman, which also is probably good. I've never been, but it's maybe a little bit farther outside of the EU than Juso wants to go. But yeah, Oman also looks really good. Madagascar is super consistent, not in the EU, no community, but super good winds, pretty awesome place. We already talked about this. Jeff, I hope you're feeling better. All right, did we talk about this, Axel? I don't think so. I recently swapped my 82-liter starboard quad for an 86 grip. Did we talk about this? I'm usually happy with quads and not sure if it's worth getting an extra center fin for onshore conditions or lighter winds. I don't know. I know a lot of people use the grip as a quad, but it seems like some people like riding it with the thruster. I could ask like Victor Fernandez or one of these guys what they use. Let me make a little note of that. Grip fins. If he uses it as a thruster. And then I would recommend getting about an 18 scorcher in the middle. I think that's a good idea. All right, we got a question in the chat from Ogus. I plan to start trying forward loops in this season. Is it better to try them powered up or slightly underpowered? So my philosophy with the forward loops is that you want to learn them gradually. And so you learn the technique and you go step by step. I have my own steps that are greatly influenced by Remco's 4-step method. And so I think you want to do it step by step, and you start with less power because you don't want to be out of control. You don't want to be scared. You want to have full control. You want to get the technique. You want to get the feeling, get the rotation. And there's a whole bunch of steps to try before you even do the first rotation. I'm going to do another forward loop course sometime soon. I'm revising the material from the first one. Look out for that. Maybe at times lines up with your season. Ogus, when is your season starting? Because I think for doing these courses, one thing I realized is it's really, really important to line it up with when people have wind, so that they can do the course with the on the water component as well. So we got a few comments. Hey, hello to Tenerife, Facebook user. Cara was saying that she saw Victor Fernandez and Mark Pare using the grip as a thruster. And Philip is saying that he also has seen Mads Bjorna using the grip as a thruster. So a lot of people are using the board as a thruster axle. So I definitely would give it a go. You probably want to have 10s on the side. Do you say what it comes with? 9.5. 9.5 might be small for the side fin. So I would maybe get 10s or even 12s for the sides. But I think 10s. I think 10s are going to be right for you. So I mean, yeah, try it with the 9.5. But as a thruster, you might want to go a little bit bigger on the sides. Like if you're liking the idea of K4, I'd go with the K4 Ezzies. I'm biased. It's my favorite fin. I was involved in the development. It's what I use. I love them. Other people like the AIs a lot that K4 makes. But I would probably go with it. I think it's either the 10 in the Ezzies or an 11 in the AIs based on what you're describing there. And then with the 18 in the rear. And definitely give it a go. All right, we talked about this last week. This is an anonymous post, so if you want to post anonymously, you can do that. We talked about fitness. We talked about that last week. And just like that, I think we're kind of caught up. Jeff, sounds nice. How are your injuries? I saw your X-ray again. It popped up in the feed in the group. Looks pretty gnarly. I hope you're okay. I think we're kind of caught up on everything. There's one more thing that I want to go over, which is a little bit of a downer. One of the Maui windsurfers, Jose Spencer, had an accident on, I guess it was last week, and pretty much he was windsurfing at Kanaha and had like a catapult in a jibe. I think he was windsurf foiling, and he's a 73-year-old avid Maui windsurfer, fit guy, and he broke his neck. And luckily he was wearing an impact vest, and that saved his life. And someone found him floating face up, brought him into the beach. But now he looks like he's paralyzed from his shoulders down. So he's not able to use his arms. Really, really tragic, really, really tragic story. And there's a lot now that he's going to have to deal with going forward in terms of his life. And yeah, I can't even imagine how difficult that is, going from being a super fit 73-year-old windsurfer to a paraplegic. So we set up a fund for him to help, so the community can support him. So if that's something that you feel like donating to, you can find the link on my personal Facebook page. I can also put it in the chat here. So I know some of you guys already have given a small donation to this. Yeah, it's really tragic. Yeah, and it's, I don't know, a member of our community, our windsurfing community. And yeah, it was just a freak windsurfing accident. And so if you can give something, if you want to give something, there's a link for it. All right. Well, guys and gals, I hope that you have some wind this week. Get on the water, be safe. That's a good reason to wear an impact vest or something. I don't do that, but maybe I'll start, something that gives a little bit of flotation in case something happens. Yeah. Anyway, thank you guys for showing up. Um, so Max, how does that work for the medical coverage? So he has insurance, but it's like, so like the insurance will cover, like they cover everything that's happening in the hospital now for him, like all the surgeries and everything. But then like he's just, how I understand it, just like sent out. And so like in terms of like getting again, I don't understand all the details, but in terms of like getting like a chair, you know, something that then he can control and like have some, I don't know, some a bit of getting around, or like there's a rehab program where maybe he can get some mobility back, which is really important in this beginning, but that's on the mainland. And so then getting there, like he has to get like a medevac flight because he can't fly commercially because he has to like stay flat because of the neck condition and blood clots. So it's like, I don't know, like the insurance situation in the US is kind of shitty with some of these things. You know, someone like Jeff, who's with us, who deals with insurance, you know, Jeff is a doctor and he deals with insurance companies a lot, probably has more information than I do. But like some of these things are covered, but then also other big things are not. So like getting getting to California to do the rehab, and he needs to take like a special plane in order to get there, is something that's not covered. It's like, I don't know. It's weird. I don't know how it is in the UK. So it's like, at least how I understand it, like the essential things are all covered. And then there's some other things that seem kind of essential, but then um, that are not. But yeah, I don't know. It's pretty. Yeah, I don't know how the situation is in other countries. The US healthcare system is pretty messed up, unfortunately. All right, guys, stay safe. I hope you get on the water. I'll see you next week, Sunday. Thanks for showing up. Take care.